Welcome to this very festive event, the Christmas Craft Along with Suzanne Booth, one of our art specialists at Kapow Primary. Lucy Roth, who is also going to be doing this today, is not very well, so it's down to poor Suzanne doing it on her own. Usual things apply. This will be recorded, and if you are a subscriber to Kapow Primary, you'll be able to get a copy of the recording after the event, usually about 48 hours. Please mute your mics, although I do think that happens automatically. We will finish with some questions at the end. Please type any questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, and if we can keep the chat box free for other things, and I will post some links into the chat box that are relevant to what Suzanne talks about, so lesson links and such like. At the end, there will be the opportunity to get a certificate of attendance. The link for that will come up when you log out of the webinar at the end. If you miss that, you will also get the link emailed to you, so don't panic. If you want the certificate of attendance, you get 2 opportunities to grab that. It is being recorded, I've said that. If you have any questions as we go along, ask away, and if it's pertinent to that moment, I will stop Suzanne and ask her. And I think really it's a bit of fun. Let's have some fun. Let's enjoy Christmas craft with Suzanne. Over to you, Suzanne.
Lovely, thank you. So would you mind clicking on to the next slide for me? So we did give you the opportunity to bring along some things so you can join in as well. So if you're sitting in your classroom or if you're at home, there's a few things that'd be great if you've got to hand. Just some coloured paper, if it's some thin paper would be great. Even if it's just to try this out tonight, just some printer paper would be absolutely fine. Said about cutting some into squares, but if you haven't got it in squares, we can do that as we go along. Some ribbon or string, again, that's not essential, but I can show you how you would use that. Having some PVA and glue with a brush, some scissors. Double-sided tape is useful to have to hand, but don't worry if you haven't. So that's something we're going to be doing together. I also put on there about if you wanted to try the foil art, which I'm going to be doing first. So you might well have gone out looking for some leaves. I've just done the same because the ones I'd already found were crumpled up and dried out already, so I had to find some more. You need something that's flat, something that's all the better if it's a bit more textured and dry. But I did say about not holly, because I was thinking people might think Christmas, I'll go and find some lovely holly. That won't work for this, what we're going to do with it. You'll also need some tin foil, some card, and maybe some crayons or felt tips. And that's again optional, so we put them on there on the email, so if you wanted to have a go of those at these things, you might have those ready. Equally, just in your classroom, you might have lots of other arts and crafts stuff around. So grab anything, have a few bits to hand. So if you fancy joining in, it would be great to see anything that you make while we're going tonight. Obviously, we're going to be sending you the information that the crafts I'm going to go through with you today. So don't panic if you see something, think, oh, I really wanted to remember how to do that. Feel free to take notes and do jottings as I'm showing you some of the live demo stuff if you're not joining in, or even if you are. But you will get that information to you as well. Okay, Sarah, I think there's one more slide, I think. Thank you. So just really quickly, what I wanted to just share with you is what my aims are for us tonight. And that is just about having a little bit of fun and doing some practical stuff, some things, hands-on experiences tonight as well. I'm planning to give you some craft activities that are aimed at certain key stages. EYFS, Key Stage 1, Key Stage 2. However, I think as with any Christmas craft, everyone loves doing anything that's Christmassy. And we certainly found last year that even though we had lessons that were directed to particular year groups, lots of year groups can do them. There's different ways you can adapt them. There's different variations you can do. And I'll be showing you some of those with my ideas as well. And obviously, as I've said, you can more than welcome to join in whenever you like. And I'm also going to be talking about, as I'm going along, things that you can put in your classroom, things that you might be able to do as a whole class together, different creative activities. Some of the things we're going to make now might be things that you might be able to adapt and decorate your classroom with, and so on. Thank you, Sarah. So I think from this point, I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to be sharing from my live desktop. So you should be able to see me, and you should hopefully see in front of you a blue screen, which is where my hands are going to be. Hopefully everyone can see that okay. Brilliant, thank you, Sarah. So the first thing that we're going to look at, this is something that I've kind of directed for EYFS, but as I've already said, I think you can probably do it with all different age groups. I think there's different ways they'll really enjoy this. And this is to make these really pretty, this is my little version of it, this lovely wreath. And it's a paper plate wreath, my version of a paper plate wreath, with these really pretty foil leaves. And that's the first thing that I'm going to show you, in that if you've got the bits, you can join along and do this with me. Because this is such a nice little craft that I think actually you could probably do other things. You don't have to make the wreath with it. So what you're going to need, first of all, you might not have a piece of card, you might just or have a piece of paper knocking around. You don't have to have this, but I found it quite useful to glue the leaves down onto something first. So I'm just checking, is that looking in focus? Okay, Sarah, perfect, thank you. So I've got my card down here. Now these are the leaves that I've got from my garden, and these ones are quite nice because they're really veiny and really textural on this side. So you can start off by getting the children to go out and find some leaves. At this time of year, there's plenty around, but you've got to be aware of ones that are starting to really die and go dry and crispy, because they will just fall apart. So you need quite freshly fallen leaves. And as I say, something that's quite broad is nice, and with this really lovely veiny texture. Once you've got your leaves, and they need to be dry, as in not wet. So you don't, if they've been out in the rain or overnight and they feel like they've got moisture on them, you will need to make sure they're dry just for the glue, and also that they make a lot of moisture as you're sticking down. And then you want to stick down first off on the flat side. So if you haven't got paper or card to stick to, just bear with for a second, because you don't want to do this part. This is only because I'm going to stick it down onto my card for the purpose of what I'm doing. So I'm gluing the flat side, and I want to go right to the edges and get it nice and even, cover as much as possible. And then I'm going to stick it down onto my card, nice and flat as I can, like so. And then you can straight away get your foil and lay your foil over the top. A bit of foil out of mine. Yeah. Now foil has two sides, a really shiny side and a matte side. I just personally prefer the matte side, but I've not found there to be any reason. So when children are doing this, it really doesn't matter which side they use. You just need to lay the foil over the top, and this is the magic bit. I love this bit. Oh, beg your pardon, I've completely missed a whole step there. I've completely missed gluing. I've got so carried away with my gluing. So you need to actually have a layer of glue on your leaf. Apologies, sorry for that. It's the pressure. So yeah, you need a layer of glue, because we're going to be cutting these out, you see. So we need there to be an attachment between the leaf and the foil, so that when you cut them out, they don't just fall off. So you do need to have that glued layer. Apologies. So I've done again now a lovely even layer of glue over my leaf, and then I can add my glue. It's going to get carried away with this tin foil bit. It's so lovely. I love doing this bit. So I'm going to lay it gently on and just press it down. And then you want to really try and press down from the middle outwards to really form those lovely veins and get them coming through like that. Like magic. And actually under the light, that looks really lovely. So pretty. Now the children can do however many you want to do with these. As I've said, you could literally just do this leaf and this tin foil art with this and do some things. You could make literally lovely, beautiful Christmas cards with these and make them look like a snowy scene on a background or something like that. And once you've cut them out, there's so many different ways you might want to use these. If you do want to move on and do the wreath, which I will show you in a minute, you might want to think about the size of leaves that you've got access to. So obviously, if you've got lots of little leaves that children have collected, they're going to need quite a few. My leaves I've used are quite big, so because of that, I haven't done quite so many. So that's something to bear in mind if you do this with the children, how many leaves they need, because it will depend on what you're going to carry on and do with them. Now you can just cut them out and have them as those lovely pretty silver leaves. If you're doing a snowy scene, that might work quite nicely. You could almost put little bits of glue on and sprinkle some white glittery something to make them look snowy. Really lovely. with the wreath, what I did with mine is actually use different ways that you can add some colour. Now, on this sample that I did when I was playing around with this, I tried 3 different things. I tried felt tips, crayons, and oil pastels. Now, I found that crayons were quite nice to work with if you wanted to just highlight the key veins, and that was kind of working over it like this, almost doing a bit like a leaf rubbing. Be aware that with children, making sure they're not pressing too hard, that could rip the actual foil. The other thing I tried was oil pastels. You can see from here, it adds a bit of colour, but it sort of merged in and sort of went a bit messy, really. So my favourite was using felt tips, because I think that really added some lovely colour. And with felt tips, it's obviously really nice and easy for the children to use. It kind of sits on the surface. And again, you don't want them to press too hard, because actually this also presses down the foil even further. But what I found was quite nice to do was to actually use my finger and blend it over. And it sort of gave it a really nice shimmer. And I tried with different colours, and you can mix, you don't have to do it green. I just happen to do mine in a typical leaf colour, but you could do them really brightly colours. You could also use those metallic pens and add on metallics on the top to really pick out the veins, and that would look really, really beautiful. When they're cut out and done, they will look something like this. So these have been done with felt tips, and they've just got this really lovely shimmer to them, and the camera probably doesn't do them justice, to be honest, because in real life they look really, really pretty and look really effective. So that's the foil art. So I don't know if anyone's had a go at doing that while I've been talking, but I think you think that's a really nice magical thing, and it might inspire you with what other things you could do with that actually, and what other things you might be able to foil in the same way as with leaves. So that's quite an interesting one. But I'm just going to
say something, Suzanne.
Yeah,
people,
of course.
If you want to comment on how you're getting on trying these things out, or if you have other ideas, please do pop it in the chat box. We'd love to hear your ideas and your successes with the crafts. Thank you.
There we go. I've just done a little bit of playing around with my new visualizer toy, and I can see that actually has come up a little bit clearer there. You can see how nice these veins and things have come up. So I'm going to show you what I did with the wreath, if you want to have a go at making the wreath, because I think that is a really nice way to use these. And as I was doing it, I thought of so many different ways that I could do that. So you will need a bog standard paper plate. I've got a kind of dinner size one, which I think said 23 centimetres. And you've often got that real clear ring in the middle, which is a good place. And that's what I use to cut mine out. Obviously, if you are doing this with early years, you probably will need to have some adult support with some of these things, or preparation, because you might want to have some of these pre-done for the children. So there's the classic paper wreath out of a paper plate. This is where you can decide how you want to decorate it. I did it a couple of ways. I tried making it look natural and just did a sort of painty effect, just roughly putting on all sorts of different colour browns to try and make it look like it was woody or natural. So that's one thing you could do. And then I did a gold with gold paint, good one for Christmas. So that's another one that I did. You could wrap it in the tin foil, because if you want to go with more tin foil, you're enjoying the tin foil vibe, you could go and do some more of that. You could add a bit of wrapping yarn around it. There's so many things you could do. You just want to think of it as your base and then decide how you want to go from there. Once you've done that, it's then starting to think about attaching your leaves. Now, I appreciate, again, as I've sort of said, this is nice EYFS craft. I appreciate that obviously what some children are able to do, it's going to vary what they can do. And it would be lovely if you could encourage them to do some sticking, some independent sticking here. But with the leaves that I've chosen, I found they were quite big to just stick with glue. So I did end up having to staple mine. So again, something else to think about. If you're using little leaves, they might encourage more independent sticking. If you are wanting to use something big, there might need to be a little bit of help. Double-sided tape could be another good one. I love double-sided. I think it's so versatile and you can use it for so many things. So
Suzanne, can I just ask a quick question before we move on? Somebody's just said their felt tip pens rubbed off? What pens were you using? What would you?
I was just using a standard Stabilo one. You can do the whole felt tipping first and very slightly just leave it before you rub it, and so it's starting to dry off a little bit, and then if you do that rubbing, then you'll find that it won't completely totally rub off. It
yeah, someone suggested beryl brush pens as well.
Yes, anything
so.
really. It might be worth having a little experiment with what works. I did try some more like permanent marker ones, and if you catch them quick enough, they have a much bolder colour and smudge, but my worry with that is that obviously then you get really mucky fingers and it's permanent pen, so I don't think that was ideal. So I think with the felt tip pens, I think it's probably a good idea to let it dry off just for a few minutes or so it's starting to get slightly tacky, and then try rubbing it. Or once it's dry and it's given that different change, it's changed the surface of the foil, you might find a second coat might make the colour stick on a bit more. It depends how bright you want it to be. You might want it to be just a subtle sheen. You might want it to be really brightly coloured, and in which case probably some of those things might be a good way to try and achieve that bolder colour like that. Okay, so the sticking on the leaves part, as I've said, it's either a case of gluing or stapling, maybe even double-sided tape, because that's a child-friendly way of doing it too. And you can decide whether you want to work all the way around and do something that goes all the way in a whole pattern, so that you actually just keep going and going, and it makes a full wreath. As you saw from my one, I went with the kind of doing it just a little few on each side, so that it was almost, I don't know what you would call that really, but as I was doing it, I just quite liked it that way. So I just do one side of this one, was stapling in towards the bottom, and then just sticking in, trying to hide some of the other staples behind, like that. And I'll do the same on the other side as well. Let's try and get that one in there. And then I just gathered up some of these really nice little thin twigs that were just knocking about outside. And I didn't attach these. All I did was use the leaves to just kind of reach them behind really, and just trap them in like that. It's quite fun. And then I used some, there's then different ways you can use to make berries or other little bits that you want to add on. I've got some scrunched up paper. That's something that the children do in one of our EYFS units. They do a paper flower design that's in our EYFS units. I'll talk about those in a second. You could glue those on with a big blob of EVA. You can buy those pre-type done baubles, little pom-pom things like that. Scrunched up cotton wool. If you're brave, you can get the glitter out. I'm a bit of a glitter fan. I have to say, I do love a little bit of sparkle, but I know the mess and the state of my classroom carpet when we've done glittering. So I'll leave that with you, whether you want to do that, but I did do that on mine. I had some little pretty little glittery stars that I've stuck on there on this one. And yeah, stuck these around the bottom.
Sorry, Suzanne, me again. People have asked to see your finished wreath up close. I think they've
that a bit better.
You've impressed them with that, so they'd like to have a proper look.
Is that better from that angle there?
Yeah, so that's nice. You can really see it. Thank you.
So I think once you've the essential of it is using the leaves to design a wreath, and I think it's a really nice way for you to utilize the leaves. But I think there's so many ways you could actually then use decorate the actual wreath itself. You can see I've added in I made a cardboard star that I just cut out and covered in foil, and I used the same technique of going over with the felt tip pen, and then I just wrote with a felt tip pen over the top here. That did actually take a few goes because the first one just pressed it in, so I went back to it to actually make it stand out. So that's kind of what we were talking about earlier, actually. That helps to get that to come up. And I just literally put a hole at the top here and then threaded the star in and had a little dangly bit. So that was quite cute. It sort of filled that gap when I was doing the wreath in this design. I thought that filled up that quite nicely. I've obviously got a hole punch at the top here, where the string to go, and then it sort of felt like something was missing at the bottom. And I didn't want to use things that you wouldn't have access to at school, because in my craft box I've probably got nice wooden stars and all sorts of things I could have put on it. So I just I made 2 holes and then just tied a bit of ribbon, so the kids could have a go at actually doing a bit of tying and knotting. That might be quite an interesting thing for them to have a little go at. You could maybe do a few ribbons all the way around it. There's so many things that you could probably have a try at with that craft and see what happens with it. So that's my first craft.
I've got one more comment, and it's probably quite an important one, and maybe lots of people are thinking about it. Obviously, we should be aiming to use eco-friendly glitter in any of these
yes,
examples.
it is absolutely. If you are a glitter sparkle fan, you should absolutely be aiming to make sure you've got that eco-friendly glitter. You can get it everywhere. I think most places now have made the right choices and made the glitter that you buy in most places you will find is eco-friendly. I've raided my craft stash of various things here, but you certainly, for buying in school, you'll be able to get access to all that really nice eco-friendly glitter if you want to go down that route, of course. So yeah, if anyone has a go at trying to use the foil leaves, I'd love to see what you make with them, whether you decide to do something with them independently, make some Christmas cards, or whether you have a go at a wreath with them. I think the foiling is such a pretty thing, and when you actually do it for real, I think you'll be really pleased at how that goes. I think it's a really, really lovely thing. So that's my first craft for you. I'll hang it. If anyone's got any other questions about that, while I just switch myself up ready for...
That was wonderful. Thank you, Suzanne. I'm feeling very inspired.
Good.
And also, if anyone wants to send us any pictures of what they do with these afterwards, we'd love to see them. And
we absolutely would. Yeah.
I will share our social media links at the end, so that's an easy way to share them with us.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that'd be a really nice thing to see, because as I say, I think once you start doing it like I was when I was making it, you used to think, oh, I could do this and I could try this. So don't feel like you have to do it exactly as I've done it. You might want to try it with older children and do more adventurous things. There's so many ideas, but I just wanted to share that foil art with you, because I think essentially from that as a starting point, I think that's a really nice little craft that you can use with the children. Okay, I think I'll go to the year one next, which is more about just a sort of showing you, not year 1, key stage 1, sorry. And this is making some Christmas trees. And I'm going to hold it up to my webcam camera as well, because it's on a little stick and it's using some paper weaving. This is something that we've got on our website in our Easter collection. So in our Easter collection we did last year, we made some baskets where I actually was doing a video showing how to do paper weaving. It's a classic craft, but if you do want to have something visual to show the children, or they could have a little practice first, that video would be really, really helpful. The nice thing with this key stage 1 craft is actually that they're going to be making the patterned paper to use. So it's not just picking out any paper. They're actually going to have some fun playing around with some paints and making marks and stuff with the paper first. So that's what I'm going to start with showing you. So ideally, you need some good quality thick cartridge paper, or something that's nearer to a watercolor paper. This is just some cheaper paper that I had from the works, which is sort of mimicking watercolor, but it's very similar to quite a thick cartridge paper. And you just want the children to, I've gone obviously with making mine green, but I've got a little hint of some blue, because it is quite nice to have a bit of a contrast so that you can see the weaving. But I went with making some nice green paper first. And you really want to try and get them to, just grab my bits I did earlier. You really want them to try and play around and let them experiment with what happens with the water and the paint on the paper. Now, we've just got a new unit that's released year 2 painting, which you could also refer to, that shows you different ways that children can make some textured painting and papers. So that might be another one useful to refer to any year group, because there's just some videos and things that they can look at. So these are different things. This was making the paper really wet, and then just blobbing my brush really wet onto the paper and just letting it, then moving it around and letting it run. And it made all these really lovely marks on here. This one was then again, I had another just quite light wash, but then I'm going to say it and I'm really sorry, flicking my brush. I know that some children get very excited by flicking it, making a lovely mess, but I love the effect of that. So you can see all these nice little blobs and things from doing that. This one was just paper was really wet, and I just was dabbing my finger on it, and just dabbing my finger and lifting the paint off really made this nice effect. Wax crayons, just let them go mad with a bit of wax crayons, doing any sorts of patterns, making marks, circles, straight lines, playing around, see what they make, and then washing over the top. It's almost a little bit like a wax resist. I found that when you are using watercolor paper, which is very porous, so the water really soaks in, it doesn't quite have the same strength. So they might want to go over the top if they want those lines to be bolder. And then with this one, I was just a nice wash of green, flicking a bit of blue. I actually had a toothbrush and I was just moving the marks and the paint around. So I actually had some ready mix paint as well. And I was dipping in some cotton wool balls and so on too while I was doing that. So I'm just going to quickly do one with you just so I can show you what I did. So I've got a nice wide brush. A brush is a good thing to have, a nice wide brush for the children so that they get a nice wide strokes. It makes it much easier. And I'm just using these sort of traditional tin type watercolor paints that you generally get in school, these little pans, and just making my brush nice and wet and the palette nice and wet. So I'm dipping into the water and actually trying to lay some of that water into the palette. You can see it's getting nice and watery. My thick brush is going over 2 paints, but that's absolutely fine. And then just nice thick, just double checking I'm not dipping my brush into my drinking water. And getting them to completely cover. Now you want 2 A4 pages for each child. Obviously, if you want to do a couple of extras, so you've got some spares, it's always a good idea, just in case anything goes wrong. Always good to have some backup so we don't get children that are upset when something happens. But the good thing with this, with watercolor, is to keep it nice and wet, and it's utilizing the wet paint on the paper while it's still wet to do the other things with it. So I do love a bit of flicking on some other colours because I just like how it lands on the paper and just seeing what happens. So I'm going to make this over here a little bit wet and kind of go into the blue like I was doing before. And then you can either just sort of try and dab, but I'll need a bit more water on there to do that, and just let it drop. You can do a little bit of...
Oh, Suzanne, while you're doing that, someone has just given us a suggestion, Emily Beard. Have you tried rock salt to lift the pigment of the paint?
Perfect idea. Yeah, absolutely. That is a really nice way of doing it. It's a similar effect to if I put my finger on, it lifts away the paint. Rock salt is another way that you can dribble that all over and sprinkle over, and it will have the same effect. Lovely. Really, really nice way of doing it. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Emily.
So yeah, they can do things that actually scratching into it as well while it's wet and kind of just seeing what happens, what kind of marks come up when they scratch away. So just a little experimental session really of just sort of seeing what kind of things they can make and what happens to the paint as they're working. I think that's a quite fun thing for them to do. With this then, in that case, you might want to do this over a couple of sessions because you might get them to make, I don't know, at least 2, as I said, maybe 3, 4 to have some backups of different sheets of paper, really playing around with what you can do to get some marks and make the paper really interesting to work with. So I'm going to put mine to one side to dry and use some of my paper that I had before. As I said, it's quite nice to have something that contrasts. So I might go with that bit of a bluer one with something like that.
There's another suggestion as well, Suzanne. Sorry, there's some lovely suggestions coming through. From Maria, you could make salted water and put it in a spray bottle. This makes lovely marks as well.
Did everyone, I don't know if it was just when I was at school, but everything we did was always with a diffuser. You used to have these little things, these little metal, like kind of was a 2-way thing like this, and
I remember those.
That reminds me of that, yeah, where you can do. So there's so many things. So don't be frightened to just experiment and try things out. So if you've come up with an idea, you have a go at this, we would love you to share it on our social media so that other people could also try making their papers that way as well. So if you've tried something out or you've got something where you've done something similar before, please do share it because we'd love to hear your ideas of other ways that you could make some really nice papers. So essentially, when they're dry, the children are going to need 2 sheets. They're going to need one for the tree, and they're going to need one that they're going to cut into the stripes for the weaving part. So with the tree, it's fairly straightforward. It doesn't have to be the green one. I just happened to pick that one. Children can do this, I would think, really. You can fold it in half so that you actually get a middle line, and open it out. And we're going to use the full size of the paper. So I'm basically going to draw a line from that middle fold at the top there down to the bottom right here, and then the same. So if I just do that very quickly. So again, I think that's something the children can do. So it doesn't matter if their trees are a little bit wonky. It's all good. And then cut that out. Now, when you cut it out, or the children cut them out, keep the bits that cut off, because I found they are the perfect thing to use on the back afterwards. So keep them to one side. So these bits we've cut off, we're going to keep those. And then our tree, little triangle like that. And then we're going to cut the slits. Now, this is the danger bit with the children, obviously, because this is the bit where we can go whoop and slice it in half. Hence why having some extra paper might be a good idea. They could totally do it freehand. There's no reason why I could do it, but I'd be a little bit dubious that it might make it quite hard to weave with if it is completely freehand. My advice would be, if you can, and again, this is all dependent on how you feel, what your children can do, what you feel they want, you feel they're capable of using and measuring and so on, whether you think it's good practice for measuring and drawing lines and so on, is to perhaps start by drawing a 1 centimetre line at the open edge. I should have said that. So this is the open edge. Here's my folded edge, the open edge, and it's almost like a stop line. Don't cut any further, don't go past your line like that. And I think children find it easier if there are lines to follow and to cut. I did my sample as a 2 centimetre gap. You could go smaller, doesn't really matter, other than just the effect that it makes and how a bit more fiddly or so on. I found 2 centimetres to be fine. And then you can, I didn't measure across the other side. I just my lines like this, across. So that actually you've got actual lines to follow, I think is a little bit easier. And the other thing to bear in mind is that the other sheet of paper we're going to use to cut into our strips, they need to be the same size as your slits to make it even. Okay, so now I'm going to do the cutting bit. So remember, you're cutting the folded edge, not the open edge, or you're going to have lots of little strips of paper. And I'm cutting up to that 1 centimetre line.
Maria's just suggested using the ruler as the gap rather than measuring the centimetres.
Absolutely. Yep, you certainly could.
Thank you, Maria.
You certainly could do that, yeah, for sure. So then you've got your, hopefully, still in one piece triangle with your slits ready for the weaving part. So as I said before, to make it even and make your squares even, you cut your strips, your other piece of paper into the same length. As was suggested, if you're using the ruler width, that's a really helpful way of doing it. The ones I had earlier I will use because I've got those pre-cut and ready. So I think we're all probably familiar with the weaving and paper weaving technique. As I've said, mentioned previously, our Easter basket video will help the children to have something if you want them to watch something to help them with this. What I found the best thing was to do was actually to start by putting one right through the middle first and then do the ones either side, because obviously we're not working in a flat square. So there's bits where it won't quite fill in. So it's much easier to actually start with the first one. So I'm going to go under first, over, under, and so on, all the way up to the top. Now, as I've said, doing mine 2 centimetre, it literally just fits into that last gap. If you wanted to do them smaller and do them 1 centimetre, you'll obviously get a little bit of a finer finish. So again, this is something else you could have a little play around with, how you wanted to do it. Then I started by going on the other ones next door. I'm going up as far as I can get. That's as far as I can get that one. Might just need to pop them along a little bit. And then doing the same on the other side. So I'm just going to do the one on this side so you can see how you get to a point where you can't fit any more in. And that doesn't matter. You just want to go up as far as it will go. So I think that's probably about as far as I can get that one. And when you've done the whole thing, you'll find that you've got these ends that are dangling. You just need to snip off. Like so. Now you can, on the other side, stick down these flaps, but I found that actually it's quite secure, and I've not felt that it needed that, but that's entirely up to you if you want to do that. Now, the last thing we did, again, these trees, you could make smaller versions, you could make a little section of them that you then use that for Christmas cards. So you could, again, use this to do all sorts of different things with. I just thought it was quite fun. I know what Key Stage 1 children, they love having things they've made and going home. And I thought a nice little, it's almost like a little lollipop. And you could stick this into the bottom of something. So you could actually have it making a whole little forest of them in your classroom, which would look really pretty. So maybe you could stick them in the bottom of some Play-Doh and then have a scene around, some snowy scenes around the bottom. So you could make a lovely display with them. You could do all sorts. So I think having the stick in the back is a really nice thing to be able to give you that versatility. I've used a just a collected stick from outside, but you could use a lollipop stick. You could use those large like kebab sticks, but make sure you cut off that sharp end before using them with the children. And I just literally taped it to the back of my finished one here. And then this is where these other halves came in, because what I then did was use double-sided tape to glue those back over the top, hide the stick, hide the back of the weaving, and then I've got a double-sided tree so that that's hidden there and so on. I've gone again, as you can see, a bit of sparkle. I've got my glitter on there. You could stick pom-poms, you could do scrunched up paper. You don't have to do anything at all. It's entirely up to you. But that's, again, something that you could do with that. And there's just my star that I've stuck on the top that I just had at home. So that's the year. Sorry, I keep saying year. Key Stage 1 task. Again, as I've said, I think lots of children might enjoy doing that. So it doesn't have to be Key Stage 1 at all. It could be any year group that you think. Anyone got any comments or anything they want to ask or share?
No, that was lovely, Suzanne, but I think actually I've been asking you as we've been going along, and no, there's no questions at the moment. So
perfect. Okay.
Are you happy for me to interrupt you when they come through?
Of course, yeah, please do, because it's good when they're well, I mean, at the moment of doing it as well, because it's relevant. I can show things, so absolutely, please do that. Right, so for this next craft that I'm going to share with you.
Oh, actually, saying that someone's asked if they could see another close-up of your Christmas tree.
Of course you can. Let me just.
That's for Helen.
Here you go, Helen. So here's the different papers. I've used contrasting papers to make that stand out a little bit, so you can see the paper that the textured paper.
It does look lovely. It really does.
And stick stuck on the back, and use those halves to cover as well. And you could make them, as I say, different sizes. There's all sorts of different things you could do with that. So I do think
the back covers is genius. Well spotted.
I know. I thought, you know, when you just want to make it look, if you're going to use it in a display or something, I thought, oh, cool.
And you can do a little aside link to maths on that one.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, perfect. Right, this next one is one that's kind of more aimed for you guys to have a little go at. So the paper and stuff that you've got with you, and if you've got some squares of paper, this is your chance to have a little go of something for yourself. Now, I've gone backwards and forwards with lots of different things with this, thinking, oh my gosh, this is quite hard, and I don't want any of you to feel like you're getting lost when you're doing it and so on. So I've come up with something that I think is a really nice base for you to actually make lots of different things with. You might actually find this is something you could share with the children, or it might be something you want to do in a staff meeting. It's something that I think you could use to decorate your classroom, that you could get, you could use it at home, you could share it with each other, and that's doing some paper craft. So I just need to grab my box over here, with my bits and pieces in. And it's to do with a little bit about origami and paper folding. Now, this looks really complicated, but actually this is the basis of something that's much easier than what I found to do. And I'm going to teach you 3 key folds, and they are the hat fold, the kite fold, and the samurai fold. So I'm going to do them on larger bits of paper to start with. So if you've got squares of paper, this is when you can use them. Or if you want to actually try and make something that's going to be more of an actual finished thing, you might want to make those squares that you've got even smaller, because you'll see in a second these folds make really large pieces, but it's good for me to show you that way to show you how to do these. So the first one we're going to do is the hat fold, which is super, super easy. Sorry, I'm digging around in my box of my square bits of paper. So you need a square and the hat fold. And with any of these, it all bases from a square. With a hat fold, you are going to fold your paper in half, long ways, so it makes a rectangle. And then you fold from the folded edge, one of those up, and fold along the folded edge. So you've gone from this corner and pushed it up to the open edge, sorry. And then you do the same on the other side, like so. That is literally it. Okay, so that's the hat fold. So we've just, I'll go through that again. We just folded it in half. We folded one corner up and we folded the other corner up. That's your hat fold. And then the next one I'm going to teach you is the kite fold. So with another square of paper, this time you're going to fold your paper diagonally. Unfold that piece of paper, and then we're going to take this corner. I now placed it into like a diamond shape. We're going to take one corner and fold it up to that middle crease line, and fold the other side up to the crease line, and that's that one. That's the kite fold. Okay, so we've now got triangle and kite. We're colour coordinated, Sarah, as well. No, she's got pink too. All right, so they're the first 2 folds. The next one's a bit trickier, the samurai fold. So the samurai fold, with your next square of paper, is you're going to fold in half and open out. Turn your paper around and fold in half the other way, so we're making a cross. And open out. And then we're going to carry on trying to cross the paper, and we're going to fold diagonally this time, corner to corner. And then do the same, open out the other way. So you're basically making a star on your square of paper. So it will look like that. You see, I've got all the crosses and so on in it. We turn it up, so all our creases are mountains, as I've learned is an origami type way of describing it, so that all your folds are pointing up. What we want to try and do is the ones that are going from corner to corner, is we want to kind of make them stand up, and we're going to push the straight edges in. I'll do that again. So if you have your folds so that they're like mountains pointing up that way, and you've got your corner to corner bends showing, folds showing towards you, you want to push the straight ones in. So you're basically making a triangle. So it will look like that with straight folds going down the middle. Have you been able to do that? I wonder if everyone's been able to follow that one. And you just want to give that a good press all the way down. So it will look like that from when you're looking at the upside down. You basically put that in. Is anyone saying they need to see that again, Sarah, or is it looking good?
Nobody said anything. I think I've managed it. So if I've managed it, you must have explained it well. Oh, no, somebody has. Lindsay would like us to try it one more time.
Okay, so Lindsay, hopefully you're at the folded bit that you made your star. So you've got all your lines together at making the star point part, so that you've got all the creases there. So you've got your diagonal
She
creases.
said just the last fold, please.
The last fold. It is the trickier bit. So what I'm doing is I'm making sure that my creases from the corner creases are facing up, and these straight, the edges here are almost being pushed together, and those triangles almost naturally form by themselves. It just pushes like that. I'll just show again. So these, where my creases are on the straight, I'm just pushing them almost together and it forms the triangles, and then I can just squash it all together into one triangle. And then I press down all the creases, and you want to press down in the middle because you've created a new crease there. So make sure you're working down here. You've then got flaps on either side by doing that. And the last step of the samurai is to take one of your corners, not both of them, so you should leave one behind, take one, and you're folding towards the middle up to that middle crease line. Like that. And then this edge folding into the middle there. Like that. And that is basically the samurai fold. Okay, so you've now got these three different folds that I've shown you: the hat, the kite, and the samurai. Now the idea is that with these three basic folds is how you can start to make these really different and lovely snowflake different decorations. You will find that you have, to get started, once you've made a big selection of these different shapes, which obviously you could do them this big because they'd look amazing. You could do them really huge, but you could also, I made some out of wrapping paper. Wrapping paper is the perfect paper to use because it's really nice and thin. It's easy to fold, and you've got the bonus of the little squares on the back quite often. So I've literally cut out a four square to use to make mine, and you just basically make all these different shapes, all these different folds that I've shown you, and arrange them into lots and lots of different snowflakes. So to begin what you would have is one more square, which you just fold to make square crease lines in the middle, and this is like your guide base to stick to, like this. And then you can decide how you want to arrange all the different shapes. So say, for example, I had 4 of these kites. I might decide to stick one here, one here, one here, and one here. And then I might decide to stick on a samurai one on the top or on the corners, and build up a different one all the way around. I could use the samurai one on its own and stick that down, and then could stick things inside here. So by having those 3 basic folds, you've got then the skills to create amazing different snowflakes. So you can make lots of little ones. As I've said, this paper here, the wrapping paper is ideal. And these squares, as I've said, were just based on the 4 squares on the back of the wrapping paper, but they measure, let's see, they measure.
Something like that, Suzanne, look.
Perfect, that's it, exactly.
They look lovely.
Exactly. These measure about 8 centimetres roughly, and that's the same size as I used to start building this one. So this is the kite on the back, and then this was the samurai one in the middle, but then I could add something else coming out here. I could, once I started doing it, I thought, oh, I could fold them bits up and that looks pretty. And you could have loads of them all hanging around your classroom, in your windows, hanging on trees. You could make really diddy ones, so you could make them into tree decorations. You could do all sorts with these. So I think having those 3 basic folds. So we will send you the instructions to make those 3 basic folds, and then you can really play with loads and loads of different creations. So that's one I would really love to see what creations might be able to come up with from making those 3 folds from that one. Again, you can add things to them and paint them, or you know, you might have a card base and so on. Is there any questions or anything about that one, Sarah?
No, nothing. I think everyone's probably busy folding, too busy to type.
So yeah, I think that's another one that I think is a really nice one for you to really play with and experiment with. I've been doing all sorts of things like trying out different origami. There's loads of really nice origami things online. We haven't obviously got time today for me to do more ideas of that with you, but you can do things like this that can be used to make little baubles, or you can use that idea to make trees and so on. Other paper things I've been doing is using cardboard tubes. If you cut cardboard tubes into slices, you can really play around with making, these could obviously be painted. You can make little cardboard tubes, rings into each other, and that's just a push pin in the top there. You could decorate these and hang lots of those around on trees, in windows. Make them look like little snowballs. So I think it looks really effective if you've got lucky to have a classroom window, that the whole window is all on a big long string of lots of different little snowballs or different things hanging down, little baubles. So they're quite fun to make. And the other thing with cardboard rolls as well is that if you cut them into slices, and again, these aren't painted or anything, you could paint them, they're quite fun to actually arrange into really ornate decorations. You can stick them into things like this and add on little beads and gems and hang them up and make decorations out of them that way. I've seen all sorts of really ornate things, squish them a bit more and squidge more things inside. So there's a few paper crafts for you to have a little think about. You might be able to either just for yourself, have a little play with, teach some of your other staff members, or it might be something you do want to try with the children. Okay, I know we're very rapidly running towards the end of our time. I think we'll just about have time for the last craft. Sarah, are we okay to?
Yeah, no, please do.
Okie dokie. So the very last thing that I've got for you this evening is the craft that I've kind of aimed towards Key Stage 2, just because it's a little bit more fiddly and requires a little bit more handling, really. Just need to step behind me, excuse me for a second. And that is to make some yarn wraps. You might have seen some of these around. I'm a bit of a yarn freak, as you can probably see from my craft room, that I love anything textile and yarn. So these really appealed to me. And I just really liked, actually, there's some nice links with maths with these as well, which is what makes them a really nice craft to look at. So this is making yarn wrapped baubles. And this is based on having a circle where you're cutting into them and wrapping around the yarn. As a variation on this, something that makes it a little bit easier is just having straightforward stars and wrapping them a little bit more randomly. It doesn't have to be perfect, it's just all the different colours, but you can see I've covered some card here in different paper just to make the underneath a bit more interesting. So lower Key Stage 2 might find something like this easier, but there is this option as well. When we do send you the information, we're going to be we do also have a template that we've made, because I found that it's much easier to get nice patterns like this if you separate your circles into 8ths, 12ths or 16ths. So pie charts essentially are really good for this. So we've made some templates with these on, so you can print these off and cut them out and the children can use them. You need a sturdy-ish card, and I found the best card, because when you start wrapping, particularly as children wrap, they can really squidge it and start making it bend. So you need something quite rigid. This is called grey board. I managed to get this quite fairly cheaply and quite a large amount of it from Amazon. It's a bit thicker than cereal boxes and so on. I just found it's a little bit better when you are wrapping lots of yarn around it. You can use other types of card like mount board, which is obviously pre-coloured, so you might not need to cover it, because this is a bit ugly, to be honest. So I just painted The painting doesn't have to be neat, because it's just almost a little bit of a background. That's just white paint on there, or covering paper, which is what I did with this one, just covered it in some blue paper. As I've said, it's easier from all my attempts and trying that the pie charts are the best way to be able to make nice even patterns, so the 8ths, 12ths or 16ths. With the templates laying on there onto your card, you can just mark where those points are and then snip into those marks. Using the back end of the scissors is much easier than trying to snip here. You've got much more force applied to this back end of your scissors. So it's much easier to kind of put the back end in and push down for about 1 centimetre and do that all the way around, like so. And the fun thing is with this is that the kids can just really play. They can do it totally randomly if they want to. Some will probably sit there and concentrate really hard trying to make a perfect star or whatever else they might want to try and do. You don't just have to work round in stars. These ones that I did that aren't when I was just playing and working it out, I've gone from line to line. I've made a square inside here as well as going round on each one, so we can have a play with missing some of the slits, as well as doing all the slits. Different colours, you can see there's white underneath and layering, but you can see why I went for colouring the background, because it just looks a bit nicer when it's on something more coloured or patterned. And all they need to do, you don't have to stick it down, because actually, to be honest, it's quite tight inside here, is just to start playing. And you can just go into every one, as I've said, or you can skip. Just make sure it goes right in. There we go. And just build it up, and can try different yarns. I've got some metallic that I stuck in here, which was quite nice, making it a bit more Christmassy, and just see what happens with it, really. So I think that's something that's quite fun to play with, very therapeutic. I think the children will have that challenge. You could give them challenges to try and make a certain shape potentially, which is a nice link with some maths work. If you want to try and how will you make a square? Can you make a so many point star or something? So that's quite an interesting thing to play with them. And as I've said, the star is a different, slightly more simpler option. Don't forget your hole though. You need your hole for hanging. So you at some point, either before they start, so they don't cover it up, is making sure you've got your hole punch hole in there as well. So yeah, that's pretty much that one really. I don't think there's too much more to say. Has anybody got any questions on that one at all?
No questions, I think.
Okay.
A lot of thank yous though. People have really loved the ideas, Suzanne.
Good, thank you. That's good to hear. And as I've said, we would absolutely love to see anything that you try. I think lots of things I've showed you this evening are things that I think you could adapt for your children, for your class. You might be able to fit it with something else that you're doing, but I hope there's some things that sparked a bit of inspiration for you, things that you could go on to do other things with, or do them exactly and either use them with the children, for yourself, decorating your classroom, however you choose to use them. We would love to see your ideas. And also, as I've said earlier, if you've got things that you've done or done things similar that you've got a little hint or a tip, we love sharing ideas with each other, so please do let us know your ideas for these as well. That would be really nice. Thank you.
Well, there's some really nice comments coming through, Suzanne, really nice. Love the stars. Merry Christmas. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you. Yes, my goodness.
Yeah.
We're actually got to think about that part. Yeah.
Lots of people love the foil leaves. People that came in late can't wait to see what they missed. Love the origami. So did I, actually. I think that was my favourite bit. Have a lovely, relaxing end to the day. Thank you, Rachel. That's very nice. We'll try.
Thank you. I have also had some other painting ideas that I wanted to share. We have run out of time, but so if you want to do some actual Christmas art, I'll discuss with Sarah and that how we perhaps share that. It might be something I share on our Facebook or our social pages. It might be something I put on the website. We'll have a think about how best to share that with you. We do have our Christmas collection from last year still available on our website. So if you are current subscribers or on your free trial, you can go to our Christmas collection. where they are adaptations of previous art lessons that have been adapted specifically to have a Christmassy outcome. As I said before, I think children, regardless that they might say they're for a certain year group because they're from a particular lesson, I think lots of children will enjoy them. So
I just saved those in the chat. So
yeah, brilliant. So you've got those as well to have a look at. Our EYFS newly launched scheme has got a seasonal unit, which I forgot to mention earlier. It has a seasonal unit, and within that seasonal unit there is a winter craft and a Christmas craft. So you've also got a couple of other things there with that EYFS unit. So yeah, there's loads of different things out there on our website for you to see. And yeah, please share. We'd love to see what you make.
And I might be able to persuade Suzanne to maybe do a little video that we could share on the on the Facebook page.
That'd be a good idea.
I will share. Before we go, I'll just share the social media links one more time. And if anyone wants to ask any questions or share their work, it's really easy to get hold of any of us that way. So please feel free to join the Facebook group or just come and find us on Twitter. Suzanne, they were wonderful, absolutely lovely ideas. I can't wait. I go into school one day a week and I can't wait to go in on Friday because it is Christmas decoration making day on Friday.
Yay,
so I'm going to try some of these things out. Thank you all for joining us. I hope you all enjoyed it as much as I did. Thank you, Suzanne. It was fabulous. Thank you, Amy, in the background. And hopefully we'll see you all again if we don't have a lovely Christmas.
Thank you, everybody. Merry Christmas.